Ayurveda's beauty blog, Skinterview. I'm your host, Vinita Sivamani, and I'm here today with Naturopathic Doctor, Dr. Wendy Leigh White. Thank you so much for being with us today, Wendy Leigh.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So for our first question, could you please tell us about your background and what really drew you to nutrition and natural medicine?
Great. So I have a master's degree in food science with minors in chemistry and toxicology, and I worked for an international food company as a product development scientist. That was fabulous in theory, but I was really disturbed by the food industry and by what, the general average American was eating. And so I did a little soul searching and spent some time starting a PhD in nutrition, thinking maybe that would be a little more closely aligned to what my values were. And that didn't do it either. So then I quit my first official job at that food company and started to just soul search and spent some time with an osteopath and a chiropractor and a natural nutritionist. And then that's when I discovered naturopathic medicine. And that to me was, wow, the body has the ability to heal itself. Absolutely. With the food piece of when supported appropriately, you give it the foundation and then the possibilities are endless.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So when it comes to healing, what are the main principles that you really follow?
So 100% the body has the ability to heal itself when supported appropriately. And so anything I do is about supporting and stimulating the body to do that healing. Nothing that I recommend, nothing that I ask of the patient is about making anything happen. It's all about giving the body what it needs and allowing it to do what it knows that it needs to do. And so you support it appropriately, but also try not to interfere with it. So everything I do with patients is about minimizing toxic exposure, chemical exposures, unnecessary pharmaceuticals, anything that could interfere with the body's functioning, we really try to minimize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those two pieces, I think, really focusing on that basic supportive nutrition, but also then minimizing the interfering. And within a context of lifestyle that supports all of that. So sleep and movement. I always say movement instead of exercise. It's about movement, relationships, connection to something greater, to self, to friends. All of that is in context with the food and the minimizing toxicity.
Sure. So can you tell us a little bit about hydrotherapy? What's involved when somebody receives hydrotherapy?
Yeah. So hydrotherapy at its basic means that we're using hot and cold water to influence the body's circulation and immune system function. So we can talk about constitutional hydrotherapy, which we will, being for the whole body. And then there might be like a local contrast, which would be for a specific area or organ system. And so the contrast is that when a body part has a cold water application to it, everything kind of constricts and says, "Ooh, that's cold," and pushes all the blood away from that area. Conversely, and that's like in a short term, conversely, when you apply hot water to an area, it allows everything to open and really bring fresh blood, fresh oxygen, fresh nutrition to an area. And by combining them, hot, cold, you can really drain inflammatory markers per se, if we're talking about maybe a sprained ankle. We can drain inflammatory markers out of an area, bring oxygenated and nutrition to an area, and keep that cycle going. Constitutional is a way to do that in a full body way. Someone would to come into the office. You can do it at home. It's a little more challenging, but it's about applying hot and cold towels to the core and asking the body to really mount a response to warm up some cold towels. It helps to increase circulation, increase immune response, drain any stagnation in an area. So it's a nice supportive therapy that's very cost effective, very gentle. You can vary the intensity based on how cold and how hot. So if you make the temperature differential greater, so very cold versus very hot, you can increase the body's response.
And so how often typically do you have patients come in for hydrotherapy?
So people can come in if they feel as though they're beginning to fight something, whether it be cold, flus, anything like that. They can come in and maybe do 3 sessions in 1 week. If they're just kind of low in vitality or low in immune function and they just need a little pick-me-up, we might do once a week for 6 weeks. So it really, as anything within naturopathic medicine, it's really individualized as to what their needs are and what's going on with any given patient.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah.
And so now switching gears a little bit to skin, what are some of your favorite skincare tips?
So first and foremost, we always talk about processed foods being not so good for us, and for a myriad of reasons. But for one reason in particular related to skin is processed foods, to make them really shelf stable and last a long time, many of them are dehydrated. So anything like a cookie, a cake, a cracker that's more shelf stable, yes, they put additives in it to make it last longer, but part of the reason is they've dropped the moisture content down so that it can have longer shelf life. And so when we eat a lot of processed foods, it's very dehydrating for our system. And what's going to show in that is absolutely on the skin. And so the more real whole foods people eat, the more they're getting that hydration in a kind of an absorbable form for them. In addition to that, you're also getting this myriad of phytochemicals and antioxidants that are going to help protect the skin from damage from, environmental toxins, damage from scrubbing, damage from sun. So really that whole food diet is really important for skin protection. And I don't think people make that direct connection often. I think another kind of skin tip for care is to really pay attention to what you put on your skin, because many people think that the skin is a barrier from, protecting the inside from the out, and that's really not the case. And I think a lot of us know that your skin is incredibly porous, and so anything you put on your skin, your body is getting exposed to. So I encourage people to choose safer products that they are doing some research on and finding out what they're exposing themselves to and what works for them and what doesn't. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. So speaking of kind of the porous skin and taking a look at the skin, not only from the outside in, but the inside out, what's some nutrition advice that you have for our listeners who are interested in improving their skin?
So first and foremost, whole food plant-based diet, where they're eating all the colors of the rainbow, encouraging them to be hydrated without, people struggle with the idea of just drinking water. They think it's boring, they don't like the taste, it's hard to remember. But you don't have to drink as much water if you're eating an abundant variety of plant-based foods throughout the day, because that in and of itself is hydrating you. So that plant-based diet, I think, is really important. Getting the wide variety of the antioxidants through food so that you have the protective effects. There are a lot of practitioners who use an abundance of supplements and vitamins, minerals, things of that nature every month for their patients. And while I do use supplementation, I use it in a much more targeted way. I would rather have a patient use all of their resources to learn how to choose, prepare, and eat really whole food plant-based. And that way, that's where their money's going, that's where their digestion and absorption are really focused, as opposed to digesting capsules and pills and powders. We really get their enzymes targeted, that they're really optimizing their digestion and absorption of real food. Because what they then take from that fuels everything else in the body, from the skin all the way into cells. So really that's the priority from the food-based. from a skin perspective, many people find that there are foods in their current diet that are irritating them. And whether it's flaring their psoriasis or their eczema or their acne, for many people it's dairy. For other people, it could just be individual foods that they seem to be mounting an inflammatory response to. I think a perfect way to experience and to try to decide, well, what is it that I'm reacting to particularly, is to do the gold standard elimination diet, where someone removes most of the most common food, reactive foods for a period of 4 to 6 weeks. And ideally, this would last until their symptoms resolve, So if they had excessive acne, for example, they would do an elimination diet until that acne took a step down in its intensity and they feel as though, okay, I'm stopped reacting to something and I'm starting to heal. At that point, they can maintain that as long as they want, challenging because it's restrictive. But at that point, then they begin to reintroduce some foods, one at a time, very slowly, every 2 or 3 days, and say, okay, when I reintroduce this food, how does my body feel? Does my acne flare again? And usually after this experience, they've identified 1, 2, maybe even 3 different foods that their bodies seem to mount a response to. And going forward, those are the foods that I typically don't say avoid forever, or even for 100% avoid, because that can get really stressful for patients. And so often it's just, okay, here are the foods that you do your best if you are presented with a choice that you minimize. There may be a time when they're not presented with a choice, if they're at someone's home and they're a guest in someone else's home, then that's where they choose to minimize their, dairy intake, for example. But if at all possible, whenever presented a choice, that they choose not to have dairy, not because it's directly, oh, it's bad for me, but really from a point of, I want to nourish my body, I want to care for my body, so why eat something that doesn't work for me? More from I'm important enough to nourish myself, and why would I want to eat something that doesn't do me good?
Well, it's a wonderful note to end on. Great advice. So thank you so much for your time, Wendy Leigh. And we know how important nutrition and healthy living really is for the skin. So thank you for your advice today. And to our viewers, thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them below or comments. And please be sure to tune in again soon. Thanks so much.